Well, hello, you wonderful individuals. Welcome to Movies and Chit Chat. This is the official home of the movie club. You asked, I answered, you're welcome. Before we get all the way into the announcement, which I'm pretty sure you know if you've been following me, but the announcement of the first movie for our movie club, please make sure you are following me. You hit subscribe, you do all of those things. We will have a separate live weekly for the movie club. That's where we will chit chat and talk and give all of our thoughts. Here is where you'll get your in-depth breakdown of the movie and the writer of said movie that we are watching. Now, the first movie got picked because honestly, I wanted to make lavender honey ice cream. Where did I get the idea for lavender honey ice cream? I got it from the movie. It's complicated. It's what Meryl Streep made, and it's what Alec Baldwin was eating in that scene where she was in the tub after he had crashed the date with Stephen Martin. I decided to tell my social media friends that I was making lavender honey ice cream. I brought the KitchenAid attachment to go on, baby, and I was churning this weekend. Naturally, with that, all of my comments got flooded with, "It's complicated is my favorite movie too." So I said, let's start there. I told the live and I was asking for recommendations for a podcast. A chit chatter recommended You Must Remember This. It is a podcast where they go in and they talk about like old Hollywood drama, honey. And if you know anything about me, baby, I was tuned in. Okay. So Saturday, I was laying up in my bed with my headphones and I said, let me check out this podcast. And I ended up finding a podcast inside of a podcast. It was called Talking Pictures. And the host from Turner Classic Movies was talking to Nancy Meyers, screenplay writer and director, producer. She does it all, a real Renaissance woman. There's crack in Cowboy Carter. I'm taking a segue. Okay, anyway. Okay, whatever. While I was listening to the podcast, I learned that Nancy Meyers wrote a lot of my favorite movies. Now, one thing about me, as much as I read the credits on music, I'm really not a credit reader when it comes to movies. What do you call a deer with no eyes? I have no idea. So I had no idea. That was me. I had no clue. And so I'm listening to this brilliant woman who honestly shaped my life. I'll let you into a little secret. My husband says that there is an old white woman that lives inside of me. That old white woman is Diane Keaton. So when I found out that Nancy Meyers was responsible for all of the movies that I love from Diane Keaton, I said, oh my God. The niche inside of the book club is going to have to be that we have to take a moment and deep dive into Nancy Meyers. So let's do it. Philly gets to claim the one and only Nancy Meyers. And at the age of 12, Nancy Meyers read a book called Act One and fell in love with all things theater. By 1970, she had graduated with a degree in journalism and even worked as a production assistant on The Price is Right. Inspired by the Mary Tyler Moore Show, Nancy decided that she wanted to be a writer. And by the late 1970s, she teamed up with Charles Shire, formerly of Motown, and they wrote Private Benjamin. After everybody in the industry turned down Private Ryan, it was Goldie Hawn's agent who made Warner Brothers pick it up. Not only did they turn it down, they turned it down multiple times, even telling Goldie Hawn that if she did this movie, it would be a career ender. By the late 1980s, Private Benjamin turned out to be one of the biggest box office hits for the year. By 1984, Nancy Meyers and Charles Shire teamed up again to give us Irreconcilable Differences, starring a then 8-year-old Drew Barrymore. That was also a box office hit, bringing in over $12 million. In 1987, Nancy Meyers turned around and wrote Protocol, a comedy starring Goldie Hawn, which did even better than Irreconcilable Differences, bringing in over $26 million in the box office. In the late 80s, Nancy Meyers teamed up with Diane Keaton and gave us Baby Boom. Honestly, one of my favorite movies. I really can't tell you what it is that resonates with me because it wasn't marketed to me, but from the very first time I saw that movie, I fell in love. She turned around again in the 90s and teamed up with Diane Keaton and gave us Father of the Bride. Now, let's take a pin here and give a little story. I learned this tidbit when I was listening to the podcast Talking Pictures. When Nancy Meyers came up with the idea for Something's Gotta Give, she ran it by Diane Keaton. And she told Diane Keaton, I want Jack Nicholson. Diane Keaton told Nancy Meyers, you'll never get him, but if he says yes, I'll do it. Little do we know, Jack Nicholson, to everybody's surprise, says yes, and we got something's got to give. Again, one of my favorite. I don't know if I'm a bigger fan of Diane Keaton or of Nancy Meyers. Nancy continues to put her foot in work, giving us Parent Trap, The Holiday, and then in 2009, she gave us the first movie for our movie club, It's Complicated, starring Meryl Streep and Alec Baldwin. Now, in It's Complicated, Meryl Streep and Alec Baldwin have been divorced for over 10 years, okay? Alec Baldwin got a new wife and a new kid. Not to mention, he also has 3 children with Meryl Streep, okay? Child, Meryl Streep's character ends up having an affair with her ex-husband while simultaneously finding herself attracted to Steve Martin, trying to kind of start a relationship. In that movie, Steve Martin is also the architect who is responsible for handling the remodel of Meryl Streep's home. Beautiful. While we're on the home, we can't talk Nancy Meyers and not talk Nancy Meyers aesthetic. One of the common themes throughout all of her movies that these characters live in gorgeous homes that we know would go for a gajillion dollars no matter what state you live in. Hello, housing market. Nancy Meyers, to her own words, is always confused about the Nancy Meyers aesthetic because she didn't go in trying to give you something aesthetically pleasing, nor does she thinks that people come to see her movies because of the aesthetic. This aesthetic is something that just kind of took on a life of its own. Now, the detail to interior design, some might say, comes from her mother, who is an interior designer, or comes from Nancy Meyers' desire to give you a complete picture. In the podcast Talking Pictures, she talks about how one of her favorite movies as a little kid is tied to a memory of the room in said movie. And she always just wanted to give viewers a total immersive feel. You know what I mean? She wanted you to feel like you were in that house. So again, she wasn't trying to give us any sort of design icon with her aesthetic. She was just trying to complete the story. Give us a design icon or be a design icon? What are words and why do we use them? I'm not sure if Nancy Meyers wants to be dubbed the rom-com queen, but in my mind, she is. She creates the perfect movie to cuddle up on your couch and rub your feet together too, whilst giving us characters that are strong but also soft at the same time. It's a very delicate balance, and it's one that I appreciate throughout all of her work. What is your favorite Nancy Meyers movie? Even better, what's your favorite Nancy Meyers aesthetic? I'm Elle. Thanks for being a part of Movies and Chit Chat.